you probably think, what? Like you might have an idea of what a priest is. A priest is like some funny hat wearing dude sprinkling holy water or some such. And you might think, well, an apostle, what's that? Like just some kind of religious title. It doesn't mean anything to me. But I'm here to tell you that you might be interested in Jesus as your apostle and high priest. Like over the ages, humanity has given their own meaning to these titles. But what does it mean if we apply apostle and priest to Jesus? The writer of Hebrews says this: Therefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider Jesus, the apostle and high priest of our confession. And a common practice when you're studying the Bible is to ask a question when you come across the word therefore or so then or since, some word like that. And the question is, what's the therefore? And that just encourages you to look at the context of what you're reading. So let's do that here. Hebrews 2, we'll back up to Hebrews 2, 16 to 18. It says, we know that the Son, Jesus, did not come to help angels. He came to help the descendants of Abraham. That's you and I. There's a father Abraham, had many sons. That's us. Therefore, it was necessary for him to be made in every respect like us, to become like the human race, his brothers and sisters, so he could be our merciful and faithful high priest before God. Then he could offer a sacrifice that would take away the sins of the people. Since he himself has gone through suffering and testing, he's able to help us when we're being tested. And then into my text for today, and so, or therefore, because of all these things, that Jesus came to help us, and he became like us, and he became a merciful and faithful high priest before God, and he offered a sacrifice that can take away our sin. And since he's gone through suffering and is able to help us in our testing, because of all that, think carefully or consider this Jesus whom we declare to be God's apostle and high priest. So I'm doing that today. I want to think carefully about you with our Jesus, our apostle and high priest. What does that mean? Jesus is apostle and priest. How is Jesus an apostle? The word apostle in the New Testament has a couple of meanings, and the first one that usually comes to mind is some dude getting all uppity about having religious authority, right? Like, don't question my authority. And for most of the world, it's just a meaningless title. Like, so what? I do question your authority, because what authority do you have over me? But in the original sense, we're talking about the 12 disciples of Jesus, the people he called to travel with him, hear his teaching, and spread his message, the good news. And later on, Paul joined in when he saw the light. Like literally, he's on the road to Damascus and he's persecuting Christians and he's blinded by the light, and he meets the Lord. And he has his life radically changed and he becomes one of the apostles. But of the 12, when you think of authority, of the 12, only the 4 of them really left us anything to build our faith on. Mark, Luke, James, Jude, they weren't part of the 12 that Jesus called. And so you've got Matthew, John, Peter, and Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament. The other guys we hardly know anything about. Like you probably couldn't even name, especially if you're not a church person, religious. You're like, I don't know who. You might say Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, but those aren't even apostles. Only 2 of them are. So who are they? Who are these guys? I remember Bartholomew. Like now, I can't be all uppity about it because I don't remember all their names either. I'd have to look it up. But I remember Bartholomew because that's just a unique name, so I can remember that one. But what did that guy do? Like how is he an apostle? Or, is there anything I should respect? And I don't say that facetiously because I need to acknowledge that he did as much and probably more than most of the followers of Christ ever do. He crossed cultures and he shared the message of Jesus and he was martyred for it. And in that sense, he embodies what we would think of as the second meaning of the word apostle, where it literally means to be sent out with a message, sent out in this case by God, by Jesus, with a message. And our modern understanding would be more akin to a missionary. And so Jesus is an apostle in the sense, both senses, that he has authority, all authority really, in truth from God. He's somebody that we can respect because his life bears out what he taught. He's not a hypocrite. But he was also sent by God with a message to share the good news. And the good news is that you can have peace with God. The price for sin has been paid. You can be free. Grace has been offered to everybody. And so Jesus is your apostle. Jesus is God's message to you. His whole life is God's message to you. His message to you from God is love, grace, mercy, forgiveness, strength in times and needs. His message is salvation. I'll save you. His message is that any who come to him will find rest for their weary souls. And his message is that he would give his life to save you. And he followed through on his message. Like, I don't blame people who get skeptical about religion sometimes, because stuff happens in religion that isn't godly. It happens. But if you have a problem with Jesus, I don't get that. I really don't. Because all he did was heal people, help people, love people, treat people with kindness and respect. His life is a message that you can believe in. And he believed in his message so much that he gave his life for it. And whether you agree with what he said, who he believed he was and all that, I don't think you can have a problem with his life. He lived it out. He was authentic and he was genuine. If you're looking for that kind of thing, Jesus was. So I think if you want to consider yourself, like looking at in religious circles, if you want to consider yourself an apostle, or if you want to follow an apostle and say there's an apostle, Jesus is the best place to start. He's our best example of what it means to be God's apostle, God's messenger, God's missionary. Jesus showed us how to proclaim grace and mercy and the love of God for everyone. It wasn't a power play. It wasn't a list of rules and obligations. He crossed cultural barriers. He went to the Samaritans. He went to the Gentiles. Now, he focused his attention on the Israelites because that's who he was sent to, but he didn't neglect the others. And he also gave them love and mercy and grace. And even women, like, back then it was a Jewish person talking to a Samaritan woman, the woman at the well. Jesus did that. He crossed those barriers. Love for God, love for people, embrace forgiveness, go and sin no more. That was Jesus' message. Help for the helpless, belonging to the disenfranchised, hope for the discouraged, healing for the broken, pardon for the sinner, friendship for the outcast, time for children. That's an apostle. That's an apostle. That's a messenger. That's somebody with a message from God, an authentic message from God. Those are the kind of apostles that we all want to see, right? We all want to see that. Crossing barriers, not making religious some kind of thing that builds barriers, but breaks barriers and has love and respect for everybody. There's an apostle. Let's see some more of those kind of apostles. The word apostle wouldn't be so charged if we saw a lot of people like that. And Jesus' message is also that he's the only way to God. His message is he's the truth, he's the life, he's the way. And if you want to come to the Father, you come through him. And if you're listening to this talk somehow and you believe in God, but you think Jesus was just a good man, I want to challenge you. Like, you respect Jesus, but you're like, he's just a good man. Well, that's something he can't be. Because listen to his message. He put it this way. John 10, I tell you the truth. Anyone who sneaks over the wall of a sheepfold, rather than going through the gate, must surely be a thief and a robber. And they didn't get what does that mean? So he explained it to them. I tell you the truth. I am the gate for the sheep, all of you. If you want to come to the Father, I'm the gate. Those who come through me will be saved. They will come and go freely, find good pasture. The thief's purpose, who's the thief? Anyone who climbs over the wall. Anyone who says you don't need to go through Jesus to get to the Father, God. Or who tell others to do the same. Their purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. My purpose is to give you a rich and satisfying life. This is the message of God's apostle. This is what God is trying to say to you through Jesus. You can have a rich, satisfying life. Any other message that leaves Jesus out of the equation or adds extra doors or hoops or, Jesus and this and that, you got to go to church, you got to do this and that. Although, let me say, going to church isn't a bad thing to do. Getting together with other believers and encouraging one another in whatever way that looks is a good thing to do. So, but going to a building or any kind of meeting doesn't make you saved. It's Jesus. Jesus alone is the way to the Father. Any other message is a message that destroys. Churchianity, as I like to call it, is a message of destruction that robs you of the joy of Jesus. Any message that says you don't need Jesus or you need Jesus and something else is a destruction. This is what Jesus says, God's apostle. And the reason why Jesus can say, I'm the gate, I'm the way, is because he's also our high priest. And a priest operates on the other side of the coin, so to speak. Simply put, an apostle is someone who speaks to people on behalf of God. And a priest is someone who speaks to God on behalf of people. The book of Hebrews says a fair amount about that, on discussing Jesus as the great high priest, the greatest high priest, in fact, who'll be priest forever by the oath of God. Like he just goes over the top on saying how awesome Jesus is as the great high priest. So many wonderful things. In the Old Testament, the priest, the high priest, would go into the most sacred place in the temple, the holy place. He'd go in there once a year, where the Ark of the Covenant was, and there was these huge cherubim with their wings facing each other, and in the area there above the Ark, so the Ark's here, and these cherubim, big, I guess, made out of gold. It would have been something back in the day. He'd go in there, and in that place above the Ark, they called that the mercy seat or the bema seat, and they said that's where God's throne is on the earth. And so you'd come in there once a year and sprinkle blood on the mercy seat, and that was for the sins of the nation, to kind of cover all the things that they didn't know they did, something they missed. Like they had to bring bulls and goats and all kinds of things for sacrifices that they knew they did, but if they missed anything, this is kind of what that was for. That's the way I think of it. It's kind of like Job's prayer for his children. Job 1:4. Job's sons, now I think he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And it says here, they would take turns preparing feasts in their homes, and they'd invite their 3 sisters to celebrate. So every day of the week, they had a feast. When these celebrations ended, sometimes after several days, Job would purify his children, and he would get up early in the morning and offer a burnt offering for each of them. For Job said to himself, perhaps my children sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Like the idea being that maybe they didn't realize it, but so I'm going to just in case kind of cover all the bases. That's kind of what the priest was doing, offering atonement for the people. Maybe you did something you didn't realize it. Another way to put it would be interceding. Please have mercy on us. It's also kind of a confession that we just can't offer enough sacrifices to cover all our sins. Like there's just no way, because we're sinning all the time. Every day our thoughts betray us. Pride, greed, lust, anger, jealousy, you name it. No one has even one perfect day. I don't have even one perfect day. I know it. I'm not pure and righteous and everything, only because God helps me. Like anything good I do is because God helps me. It's not because of any goodness in me. I'm just an ordinary person. And that's to say, like, I'm not saying I'm a bad, terrible person. I'm just saying I'm just normal. We're all like this. Not a single one of us has a perfect day. We all have something that comes up. And so Hebrews 7:27 says this, unlike those other high priests, Jesus doesn't need to offer sacrifices every day. They did this for their own sins first and then for the sins of all the people. But Jesus did this once for all when he offered himself as the sacrifice for people's sins. He came as an apostle to tell us the way to salvation, and then he died as the sacrifice so he could be our priest. And since he lives forever, Hebrews says, therefore he is able once and forever to save those who come to God through him. He lives forever to intercede with God on their behalf. This is something that's really meaningful to me. Jesus came with a message to you from God. And now Jesus is in heaven with a message to you from God. And Jesus stands up for anyone who comes to God through him forever. He pleads their case forever. He'll stand in their place forever. His sacrifice for their sin is in effect forever. Stand in front of God to deliver you from judgment forever. And that makes it sound like God's angry at you, but we need to remember that this was God's idea. That God sent Jesus as his apostle to deliver this message. This is what I want you to know. Jesus is on your side. Good news. Jesus saves. You can have peace with God through Jesus Christ, and Jesus will stand for you forever. He's always going to be there in the throne room saying, God, have mercy. God, have mercy on them. Like, I like this idea of like the devil's an accuser, right? So whenever you feel like, man, I blew it today, and the devil comes and tries to say, you idiot, you blew it today, you're so lousy or whatever, this guilt and condemnation, whenever you feel guilt and condemnation, like even if religion is bringing the guilt and condemnation, that doesn't come from God. Like conviction, like a realization that I need God, that comes from God. Like I need Jesus. But condemnation, like, oh, I'm such a terrible person, that's not it. Because Jesus is there to say, no way, I died for them. Especially like if you never accepted him, that's what he'll say for you. And if you have accepted him, that's what he's saying right now. Like anytime you feel like, man, why am I such a loser? Why can't I get it right? And Jesus is there. No. I died for that. I died for you. And he pleads your case with the Father forever, for eternity. If you put your faith in Jesus and confidence, he'll become your priest. And as your priest, he'll go to bat for you every single day for the rest of eternity. When you stumble, when you fall, he'll stand between you and God. When you're angry and bitter, he'll stand there. Even when you sin and rebel, he'll stand there. I died for that. He won't ever let you go. He's your priest. And the Bible says he lives forever to intercede with God for you. And so I want to back up a little bit into Hebrews 2:18 again. And it says, since he himself has gone through suffering and testing, he's able to help us when we're tested. And if we jump ahead to Hebrews 4, this high priest of ours, Jesus, understands our weakness, for he faced all the testings we do, yet he did not sin. So let's come boldly to the throne of our gracious God, because we will there receive his mercy, and we will find grace to help us when we need it most. Are you being tested today? Temptations, troubles, hardships, disappointments. We're all tested all the time. Jesus gets it. Jesus understands. He isn't looking at us shaking his head like, how could you do that? How could you mess up? How are you struggling to understand something that's so easy to overcome? Doesn't roll his eyes, sigh in exasperation. Jesus gets you. He knows. He knows all about our struggles. One of the things we hear so often in the ongoing generational discontent is that the other generation doesn't understand how I feel. They don't understand how hard it was or how hard it is. Either way. Like I had to walk 10 miles to school. Like you think I had everything handed to me. I had to work for that stuff. Like it wasn't easy. And on the other side of it, I can't even go to school. Like I can't even afford to go to school. I'm crushed by weight. There's this frustration that you just don't understand my struggles. You have no empathy for me. Well, I want to tell you, Jesus does. Jesus gets you, and he cares. And not only does he care, but he can actually give us help when we need it most. That's what the Bible's saying here. And you might say, well, what kind of help is that going to be? Some kind of warm fuzzy? I need something tangible. I don't need some kind of promise for a future in heaven or some pie in the sky. I need some help right here, right now. And all I can tell you is give him a shot. Give him a shot. What do you got to lose? Because Jesus helps me. That's my testimony. He helps me all the time. Sometimes he gives me hope to carry on. Sometimes he gives me strength to endure and overcome something that isn't pleasant, but he helps me through it. Sometimes it's a surprise check in the mail or a gift of food. Sometimes it's grace and mercy when I feel really down on myself. Jesus helps me. And I love the Rich Mullins song that says this. The lyrics are just so good. There's bound to come some trouble in your life That ain't nothing to be ashamed of. There's bound to come some tears up to your eyes. That ain't no reason to fear. There's bound to come some trouble to your life. Reach out to Jesus. Hold on tight, because he's been there before and he knows what it's like. You'll find he's there. He's a great high priest who understands our weakness. And so we can come boldly to God and find grace and forgiveness there. This is true in my life. It can be true in yours for you. Call out to Jesus. The verse I read at the start says, consider this. Consider Jesus your apostle and high priest. Dwell on it. And I hope you do. I really hope somebody's thinking about it today. Jesus is the leader you've been looking for. He's never been false. He's never told you a lie. He never sugarcoated anything. He said it's a hard road. If you want to follow me, it's hard. It ain't easy. But it's worth it. And then he led the way. He walked the talk. He took the hard road and he followed it right to the end. For you. Because he's yours. He's your apostle and high priest. And he brings to you this message of hope from God. You can be saved. You can have a hope for a future that doesn't depend on the leaders of this world figuring out global warming or a system of equitable wealth or sustainable and responsible use of resources. He'll help you. Like, life on this globe is hard, but there's something worth hoping for. And you say, well, what? Heaven? Hoping in heaven? No. Jesus. Jesus is worth hoping in, living for, dying for. Jesus is. Jesus is saying, I'll save you. I'll set you free. I'll give you peace in this world and with God. No, that doesn't depend on your circumstances. I'll give you a life worth living and a future so great you can't possibly imagine it. The present troubles we're facing are not even worth comparing to your future in Jesus. And if you've never asked Jesus to save you, I'm asking you, think about it today. Consider Jesus as your apostle and your priest. Think about it. Give it some thought, would you? Give him a chance. And if you have asked Jesus already to save you, I'm asking you to do the same thing. Think about Jesus today. Consider how wonderful he is. Consider how faithful he is. Consider how much he's done for you and how much he continues to do for you every single day. And that he promises to be with you and to stand on your side forever to the end of time. Consider your hope and your confidence. Consider Jesus. God bless you. Have a great day.